So, summer's coming up. Um, well, by that I mean like the actual season, not the vacation. If you want to get all technical about it, fuck you. But yeah, summer's coming up. It's getting warmer because global warming. And, all of those clock mills burning fossil fuels from clocks, and but yeah, it's getting warmer out, and that means that every little kid and their rich white suburban family has a in-ground pool that they like to soak in and have a blast, splash each other, laugh, eat some hot dogs, eat some clock dogs maybe. No, just kidding. That would never happen. um, yeah, just have a good old time. But what a lot of people tend to overlook about pools is when you go underwater and you swim a little. You swim a little. You have your little goggles on, those Speedo goggles. Nice little logo in the middle, you know. And you see this square, and you look a little closer, and it has these little holes. And you're thinking, you're young, you're curious George, and you're thinking, what the heck is that? So you keep swimming, right? And before you know it, uh, you get sucked in, and it's too late. This is the oh my god. Ah. you know Okay, when the bubble gets stuck in your throat, that shit's just what happened to me. Oh my god. um, but yeah, what I just described, not the bubble thing, the pool drain. This is the phenomenon known as the pool drain. Now, not all of us are as rich and privileged as these white suburban families, and we may not, you may not know what a pool is. Well, a pool is a body of water that is maintained and cleaned for human repurposing. So basically, you just jump in and have fun, It's nice. You get soaked in there. It's supposed to be a relaxing or fun experience, not a terrorizing one. Now, the pool drain, you see, the pool drain has a purpose. It's not just there to suck little kids up. I know what you're thinking. It's awful, right? Like, why doesn't the government stop that? But it's not. It has a purpose. If not for the pool drain, the pool would overflow, and America would probably suffer from another great. Like, you remember the whole Hurricane Sandy, the flood, and like houses were blowing around, people were swimming in the streets. It was awful. That would happen again if not for pool drains. And I don't know if you realize this, but if we were to be submerged in water, like our civilization is not ready for subaquatic life. There's just no way about it. Now I know that in Japan there was actually an engineer that did like make a model of this, like an underwater society, and it was basically this building that would, it contained the oxygen on the inside, but it was submerged underwater. So it was, for human life in case, one day Poseidon, enacts his revenge on mankind and floods our bitch asses. But yeah, that's Japan. That's not America. Like you don't see Hillary writing these contracts for subaquatic society and civilization. Like, no, we can't do that yet. So, yeah, the pool drains are not just communist machines. They have a purpose, is what I'm saying. But what a lot of people take for granted is that pool drains. No. Scrap that. Pools in general have a very underestimated danger potency. And by that, I mean, kids can be dumb, right? Like kids, very underdeveloped, very dumb, and very curious, like I said earlier. You give Johnny his little floaties, his little rubber ducky flippers. He's got his Speedo goggles. His sponge block pants, not pants. What do you call them? Trunks. Yeah, give him his sponge block trunks, and he's having a good time. Yeah, don't go too far, Johnny, or you're gonna drown, and the pool drain will get you. Kids don't listen. They're dumb, like I said. And before you know it, shroom, he's gone. Rip. The drain is so powerful that Johnny's little body just, his skin gets sucked in the little circles. And he's gone, Like, people don't get that. It's a recurring problem in American society, and I'm sure even internationally, that people just don't watch their kids. Like, if you can't even, let me just throw some shade here, alright? I don't mean to get political, but if you can't even watch your kid at the zoo and let his little scrawny ass take a quick dive in a gorilla cage, he's not going to be safe in that pool. Like, he's not going to be able to defend himself. I'm sorry. I don't want to get political, because I think with the previous speech, if you will, with that, I delved into politics quite enough. I apologize, but it's the truth of the matter, and I'm a man of my word. I don't like to tell people what they want to hear. I like to tell them what they have to hear, because sometimes what you want to hear is not what you have to hear, but what you have to hear is not what you want to hear. Pretty sure that was like a Karl Marx quote or some bullshit, I don't know. But yeah, back to pools. Now, if you listen to the previous entry in my political speech on clock dogs and the whole Cuban Missile Crisis, you will know that there were such establishments known as mills, like Puppy Mills and those godforsaken clock mills. And now I know you're not gonna believe me, but there is such a thing as a pool mill. I know, right? It's a pool. Like, there's not a pool dog. How can you have a pool mill, right? So pool mills were established a little after the Cuban Missile Crisis. So think the clock dog era, but not exactly within the clock dog era, because the clock dog era, obviously, as I said before, I don't want to rehash or anything, but as I said, it had like its own premise, and like it defines the era. So I don't want to mix the pool mill era with the clock dog era. You get me? So yeah. So yeah, it was a little after the Cuban Missile Crisis. Tensions were dissolving between the America and Those good old Soviet bastards. And JFK was assassinated, bless his soul. And good old, what was his name again? It's on the tip of my tongue. His name was good old Lyndon B. Johnson. That's the one. Sorry, it took me a minute to remember there. Yeah, but Johnson, LBJ, took the throne, right? And as I'm sure you know, around this time, this is when American society began to, I don't want to say adapt to more modern ways of life, but we just started to accept popular things in culture, in home life. Like women started working more. Um, I know the TV was popularized a few years prior. So things besides the whole Vietnam scare that would follow this big crisis, I think things, in American society were adapting pretty well. Like new technology, new consumer products, all of that great stuff. And obviously, in-ground pools were one of them. It's such a simple idea, right? You just, carve a hole into the ground and throw some freaking chlorified water in there and let your kids have a blast. It's a simple but good idea. At first, these pools didn't have drains, the drains that I described earlier. They were just have water in there. You let the kid in, and hell, you let the dog in too. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't let the dog in the pool because then, first of all, no one likes a wet clock dog. Like, I don't know if you ever had a wet hot dog, when you go, say you're at a baseball game or something, you're hungry, and you see the guy walking down the aisle, you say, "Yeah, I'll take it, Frank." And so you take it, and it's just covered in grease, covered in, like, coated, painted practically in grease. And so, you don't have any napkins. You look to the guy to the left of you, ask for one, and he's too busy on the game. He's too busy looking for the next home run. He doesn't care about your greasy cock, and yeah, and you're stuck with this wet dog. So I wouldn't let a dog in a pool. And secondly, I'm sure dogs. Not to insult your dogs, but dogs are not the cleanest of beings, and I wouldn't let my kids swim in a dirty dog pool. That's all. That's all I'm saying. And chlorine cannot be good for dogs. Dogs are drinkers because they're always running around and using energy. So, yeah. Bottom line: pools and dogs don't mix. Don't mix them. But yeah, what was I saying? Um, right. American pools. Yeah. So pools. Summer comes along, and you've got this pool installation. Great, right? Well, not so much. See, before pool drains were invented, pools would overflow because people didn't understand that the pool can only contain so much water, right? Because what you have to understand with a pool is that water is kept in this little filtration system, right? Keep it safe, and it's constantly pumped into the pool, right? And the drain's purpose is to make sure that the pool doesn't overflow, because if a pool overflows, like that's not good for anybody. People could slip on the deck. If you have one of those like cruddy little rubber pools, gets all over the lawn, and the grass overgrows because you've got too much water in there. And then, not to mention dangers of growing grass with chlorine water. Like, that's just a chemistry lesson of its own. But yeah. So people didn't get that pools would overflow, right? Like, and it was disastrous because people would complain that like the pool was faulty, but in reality they were just too dumb. Like, they didn't pay attention in your high school chemistry class. Like, guys, everything has a limit of volume, all right? You can't fill a hot air balloon with too much hot air or it's gonna pop and then you fall. Oh no! And then you blame the government, you blame Trump, but it's your fault. So, bottom line, where the fuck was I going with this? So pools were not safe back then. Like in the, I want to say towards the 60s and 70s, I guess. And then some guy had the bright idea, who may or may not have also been my dad. I'm just kidding. He's not, he's not that smart. But yeah, some guy invented the pool drain. I guess you could call him fodder drain. And it maintained the pool. So yeah, everyone's happy. No more floods, right? Well, there's still a problem. The genius who invented this little hold contraption didn't realize that the pressure could suck you in, right? And millions, I'm talking millions of Americans were being sucked in by their pools because of this man's, lack of foresight. Like, he didn't predict that, Americans would get swept up by these contraptions. And so many deaths racked up. Do you know why when the Vietnam vets came home that they were shamed and disgraced and no one respected them? Is because back at home in the US of A, everyone in the pools, they were dropping like flies. And compared to what was happening in Vietnam, this was a far greater deal. Vietnam's the impact of that war, along with the vets and their contributions, were just overlooked, all because of one man who failed to make a foolproof pool drain system. That devil. Now, I'm not sure who this man is, but you know what? This is why we have. This is the future. This is not the 60s/70s. We are 2016 America. We can look this up. Who invented the pool drain? Ugh. I hate when they don't just give you a straight answer. Hold on, I gotta do some reading. All right. A swimming pool, swimming bath, wading pool, or paddling pool is a container that is filled with water to enable swimming or other leisure activities. Right. Who invented the pool? Oh, so okay. It says the first pool was made in Pakistan during the 3rd millennium BC. Wow, so like these Pakistanians would have never I don't think that's right. But these Pakis would have never guessed that the dumb Americans, right? Like these cocky, foul-mouthed whiteys. That was so racist. But yeah, that these dumb Americans would get sucked up by their own creation, right? How foolish. So when um Latin America. All right, so I'm back. Now I will admit that I had to take a breather and just reevaluate what I'm saying because I was admittedly straying from my thesis, and I apologize. I know we strive for professionalism on this channel, but it's just hard to stay in line when the topic has so many branches. It's kind of like a tree. I'm kind of talking about a tree here. Like when the topic has so many sub branches, you you lose sight of yourself. So yeah. And also, I received a message from a colleague of mine, a dear colleague of mine, and I deemed it more important than the topic at hand. I know that sounds absurd because pool mill crisis. I know, but hey, gotta gotta stay in touch with your friends. One day they might get swept up by a pool, so you gotta treasure them while you can. But anyway, back to the point, right? Um, Pool mills. The Pakistani eyes would have never predicted that one day the Americans would start this pool mill system. Now you're probably thinking, pool mill? How can they mill pools? Well, you would be surprised. Members of the Pool Mill Alliance, you see, they would rush into people's backyards, they had these big old pairs of scissors, right? They would snip, snip, snip along the ground and just lift the pool right out of the ground. And obviously, there was some collateral damage to go along with this because, hey, what if they were removing the pool when people were still in the pool, right? So this resulted in even more deaths. And so, obviously the Pool Mill Alliance, being the sneaky dogs that they are, they just swept this under the rug because, hey, it had to be done, right? Lyndon B. Johnson um, actually licensed the pool mill. Yeah, this is another notable fact. Unlike the puppy mills and the clock mills I mentioned prior, this was the first official mill in America. This pool mill, because obviously it's a bigger threat than, say, eating a clock dog with a crunchy minute hand on it. Because people were dropping like flies. Pools were seen as communist insurgents in the US. Like what was once a fun way to cool off and spend time with your family is now the biggest terrorist threat in America. No one felt safe anymore. Like people didn't really understand the volume of this threat, and they just stopped swimming altogether. So I should probably go into detail about the pool mills themselves and what the pools would undergo at these mills. Now, like any mill, the pool mill was this very confined was a very confined space. Um, the pools, along with their drains, were treated very harshly. Like, if you think the dogs had it bad, you should have seen this. There were pools stacked on pools. They had pools in pools, pools in those pools, and then you see the drain at the bottom, which was obviously considered the biggest threat, was just ripped right out, and eventually, you see, after the Vietnam War, America was dealing with another threat in the form of terrorist activity. Now, some people blamed the terrorists for implanting faulty pool drains into their homes, but I think that's a bit of an extremist agenda. Because honestly, when would the Iraqi terrorists actually find a way to access this new technology, right? It's a bit of a stretch, but yeah. Anyway, they were dealing with hostages being taken by these terrorists, and and to get them back, they had to offer something in return. I don't know why they didn't just offer them clock dogs. Because, hey, look at it this way. It worked. It worked during the Cold War. So why not, why not throw them a fresh box of clock dogs? No. No. Instead, what they gave them was pool drains. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why would they give them something so dangerous, right? If you read about this section of history in a textbook, they're going to tell you that the U.S. sold some weapons to these terrorists in order to get the hostages back. Well, these quote-unquote weapons were actually pool drains. That's right. America sold its own filthy creation to another country. And now, I don't want to... If anyone out here is offended by this, please, by all means, you can voice your opinion in the comments section. But I do believe that about 10 or 15 years later, thinking off the top of my head, that pool drains were used in the 9/11 attack. Obviously, I don't want to get into gruesome specifics because, well, I kind of have to, you see, because on this channel we strive for the truth, and like I said earlier, you don't want to hear it, but you have to, because I know this stuff. I have a certificate of authenticity. I research this on a daily basis. So, as we all know, 9/11 attack took place on 9/11, and people say that the biggest loss was when that suicide bomber hit the World Trade Center. But I would disagree. I beg to differ. See, the pool drains, right, that they had given these terrorists I don't want to say a few, but like a decade prior, they refined these pool drains, and they could be used outside of water. So they weren't just limited to pools. Let me get this straight. Imagine the effects of a pool drain, and now above water. So you could just be walking around walking around the streets of NYC, and you get sucked up. Like you think it's just a sewer drain or something, but it's a pool drain. And as people were panicking after this awful attack, they didn't realize that the terrorists had implanted these drains in the ground, in the streets of New York. And the death toll skyrocketed even more because people were so afraid. It wasn't their fault. At this point, good old Bush, our buddy Bush, was president, and the backlash on him increased oh, so much because of these pool drains. Like, they were blaming him. Like, why didn't he do something about this? Like, how could this just get under the government's nose? And people were more angry about the pool drains, the out of water pool drains on the streets of New York, than the bombings on the Pentagon and the World Trade Center. This is something that's overlooked in history, and I feel that people do this because when you hear, when you hear pool drain, right? You don't think threat, like communist threat, but it's true. Like, just because it sounds dumb doesn't mean it won't work. They found a way, those terrorists. And I think what I'm really trying to say in the grand scheme of this is that JFK was wrong. And that if he had given those terrorists clock dogs instead of weapons, that the whole 9/11 and the whole ISIL conspiracy could have been avoided. I think he was so wrong because think of it, what wrong can you do with a clock dog? You just eat it and you're happier. Like clock my old man and I wanted to bring people together with clock dogs of all races, religions, like the Soviets, but of course they denied us. I don't mean to advertise here because I get it. We're talking about pool drains. This is the point I want to drive home. Clock dogs could prevent terrorist activity because when you present someone with something new, like the clock dog, at first they're not going to like it because, people don't like change, it's natural. But if we had started this trend back then with clock dogs and terrorists, we might have been able to nullify like their hateful thoughts towards us. We might have been friends with Al Qaeda and ISIL thanks to clock dogs. I It just upsets me to think that they were never given a chance. See, the job of a historian is to consider the missing links in history. You have to think what could have happened? Why did this happen? How could it have been done differently? And this is why the lack of hot dogs in the war on terror just saddens me because obviously I'm not a time traveler. I can't just go back and convince JFK to fork over some clock dogs. I've learned from colleagues of mine, you may have heard of them, Timothy Moore, Brennan Bittner. I've I've discussed the Clock Dog initiative with them, and they didn't seem to agree. I said, why? It's such a simple yet promising idea. And they shot it down because apparently clock dogs are not a genius invention. But I disagree. Clock dogs were a far greater invention. Pool drains. Pool drains caused countless deaths, and it was all swept under the rug. Clock dogs, on the other hand, had promise. Despite what any historian may tell you, oh man, if you're going to get any message out of this, just don't don't use pools this summer, and not in fear of the drain. Oh no. Don't use the pool as a boycott against America. We need to tell America that it was wrong. Our proud, prosperous country, dare I say it, was wrong. Thank you.